welcome back to my channel, Beautiful Minutia. If you're new here, my name is Tiffany, and welcome to day 7 of the 12 days of Christmas. Today, I am going to be revisiting the goals that I made in 2022 and kind of seeing how I did. I actually had a real goals video that I will link, so that way if you want to watch the original video that you can, but that's what I'm going to be referencing during this video. And I'm also going to kind of be reviewing my TBRs for 2022 as well. So let's dive in. We're just going to start with just regular goals before we get to the TBRs. So my first goal was to keep track of reading challenges, and I think I did a pretty good job at this. I actually had some spreads in my bullet journal that had like a section for challenges and a section for buddy reads. And I think that I did a really good job of utilizing both of those and helping me be prepared for upcoming challenges that I knew was going to happen, or just being able to track them in there. And I think that that was really helpful for me. My second goal was to limit buddy reads and readathons. And did I do this? Some months. Overall, I don't know. When I made these goals at the end of 2021, I was coming off of being really burnt out because I had a lot going on and I way overscheduled myself for Victober. And so I took some slower months at the end of the year because it was just too much. And so I had a few months where I felt kind of overwhelmed. In particular, February, I felt pretty overwhelmed because I had Feb Regency and the Library Love Readathon in addition to buddy reads. And then I went right into middle grade March and had all that stuff. And at the same time, I was also working my way through War and Peace. And I just had a lot that was happening. And so I think that in some ways I did better in certain months. Even Victober, like I tried to limit myself, I think, to 2 to 3 buddy reads a month. And there were months that I did do that. But then during Victober, I actually had like 4 buddy reads, which was a lot. But the way that I split it up actually made sense and made it like really achievable. Like one of my buddy reads went throughout the entire month of October, and it was my audiobook for October. And then one went throughout the month, but it was like short story collection. So that was a little easier. And then the other 2 were shorter Victober reads, like, you know, both were under 400 pages, but one I think was actually under 200 pages. And so I read one of those the first half of the month and one the second half of the month. So I structured those 4 reads in a way that was actually super achievable for me. So I didn't actually feel overwhelmed at all during that, which was awesome. So I would say that overall I was more successful in either structuring it correctly or not overscheduling myself, but there were definitely months that I did not do a very good job of saying no to people and saying no to events. And it's not even so much that I had so many people inviting me to join in these things, it's that I'd see them and I'd want to participate in them. I think I did better overall though than I did in 2021, so I'm still gonna count that as a win. My third goal was to adjust my reading goals and my expectations. I discovered in fall of 2021 that I could not read as much as I used to read, and that continued again into 2022 because we kind of went from the whole world being on lockdown from COVID to then things opening up again, and then in the process of that we moved, and then we joined a homeschool group, which we had never really been part of a homeschool group for my daughter, and she started doing sports, and we had all kinds of church events that we weren't used to having and all those kind of things. And so it really culminated in me not having as much time and me just kind of thinking, oh, I can still read like 14 books a month. Yeah, I can totally still do that. No, I couldn't. So I do think that in a lot of ways I did adjust my expectations. I didn't get down on myself for not reading as much as I used to, because both in 2020 and in 2021, I read almost 200 books. And in 2022, I read a little bit over 100 books. So it was like almost half of what I had read the previous 2 years. And so I definitely was more than okay with that. Still felt like I had a great reading year. But in terms of my goals adjusting, like I made my Goodreads goals like 100 books, and that's fine. That's what I put every year. So that was totally fine. But I made a lot of TBRs, and that was something that I changed for 2023 because I made way too many annual TBRs. So I did my reader rid project, which was a way to read some of the books that had been sitting on my shelf for far too long that I wasn't sure if I was even going to like. And I actually have a video coming out tomorrow about my results in how I did with reading that. But that was 25 books that was on that list. In addition to that, then I had my classics TBR, which I'll link that video in case you want to watch it. There were 15 books on that TBR, so that was a lot. And of those books, there were several that I didn't get to at all. So one of my books that I listed, actually it was 13 books officially, but I put the Lord of the Rings trilogy on there and counted it as one. So it was really 15. And so I didn't read The Two Towers or Return of the King. I got about halfway through The Two Towers and then just didn't finish the rest of them. I did not read Return of the Native by Thomas Hardy. So last year would be like the first year that I haven't read a Hardy for the past like 4 years. So that's unfortunate. I also was going to read A Tangled Web by Ellen Montgomery, and I did not get to that one either. And then I also put Demons on that list by Dostoevsky, and I am currently reading that one, but we decided to make it a 3-month long read along, and so it started in December and isn't finishing until February. So that's like kind of 50-50, I guess. And then I also made a 5-star prediction list, and I made this list actually in February because that's what I had done the year before, but I put 10 books on that list. And out of the 10, I actually did read some of them, but there were 2 that I didn't finish, one of which is Demons, and then the other one was Fathers and Sons by Ivan Turgenev, and I didn't read that one at all, but it did make it on my classics TBR for 2023, so I will get to it at some point, but I absolutely did not finish every book on that one either. And then my next goal was to read more nonfiction, and so I made a nonfiction TBR specifically with 8 books that I wanted to finish by the end of the year. And out of those 8 books, I only read 4. And part of my problem with it is that they were books that overall I was interested in, but also like I wasn't necessarily interested in reading it right then. So that was kind of an issue, that it wasn't like it was related to other things. And one of the books on there was actually Washington, A Life by Ron Chernow. And my husband started reading that book, so I couldn't pick that up exactly when I wanted to, and he's actually still reading it, which it's now like been almost a year that he's been reading this book, but it's like 1,000 pages long. But my goal for reading nonfiction was achieved because in 2021, I read 11 nonfiction books. And in 2022, I read 13. And I also achieved the goal of reading more nonfiction that was a little bit out of my comfort zone. I am very used to reading spiritual nonfiction and kind of like self-help and like homeschooling type nonfiction. And I did read a couple of those books, but the majority of the books that I read were historical nonfictions or memoirs or things like that. And so they were actually definitely not the normal type of nonfiction that I read. And so I feel like I did technically hit that goal, although I did not finish my nonfiction TBR. In fact, actually, I just opened up my bullet journal and I had 4 checked off from that list of 8, but one of the books that I checked off was Isaac Storm by Eric Larson, and I didn't finish that book. So maybe I shouldn't have even checked it off the list. I chose to DNF that book. So out of the 4 that I read, only 3 of them were actually completed. My next goal is to intentionally choose my classics TBR, which I did. And like I said, I did not complete everything off of that TBR, but I did choose things like with intentionality and things that I actually wanted to read, so that way I had some sort of direction in reading classics. But unfortunately, you know, what happens on BookTube is you see lots of other people that are reading books that you've had on your shelves and you really want to get to. And so you jump into buddy reads or read-alongs, and then maybe you don't end up getting to all the books because, like I said, I had 15 books on my classics TBR, and though I did not finish all of those books, I read a lot more than 15 classics. So I still, you know, did intentionally choose my classics TBR, but I guess maybe I didn't read them as intentionally as I could have. My next goal was to reduce my physical TBR, and my plan for doing this was to use my Read or Rid project as a way to do that. So I was planning to select 24 books that I needed to read by the end of the year, or I needed to get rid of them, and I actually accidentally selected 25, so that's kind of funny. And so I do feel like the Read or Rid part of my reducing my physical TBR, like that was successful. But unfortunately, because that was the only plan that I made, I didn't do any sort of plan or any sort of prohibiting myself from purchasing new books. So while I did go through my Read or Rid project, I also continued to bring in a lot of books. So you've probably already seen my goals video for next year. And so that is something that I want to work on, because you can't actually reduce your physical TBR, even if you're doing a Read or Rid project or something like that. You can't actually reduce your physical TBR if you continue to bring in more books than are even on the list. So again, while I succeeded at my Read or Rid project, I can't say I actually completed this goal. My last goal was to use Storygraph more consistently, because I really liked the pie charts and graphs and stuff on Storygraph. And I did use it very consistently. Actually, a lot of times I would actually use it more consistently than Goodreads. And I know a lot of you follow me on Goodreads, and Goodreads is fun, but I like Storygraph because it's quicker for me. Like when I go on Goodreads, I feel like I have to write some sort of review when I'm putting the star rating on there, and sometimes they're really short reviews, but I feel like I have to write something. On Storygraph, I never write anything. I just check off different things, because it's got like a section where you check like the mood of the book, and then it asks you, was this character driven or plot driven? Was there good character development? Were the characters likable? Was it a diverse selection of characters? And then it's got a section for like content warnings and stuff like that. So it's got all that stuff, and I fill that out, but that's all I do. I don't ever write any review on Storygraph at all. And so that actually motivates me to use it that much more. If you have Storygraph and you would like to follow me or be friends on Storygraph, that is always linked in the description of my video, along with my Instagram link and my Goodreads profile. So those are all there if you want to follow me on any of those social platforms. So those were my goals for 2022. And overall, I feel like I was successful with most of them. And I think that my biggest downfall, and the thing that caused me the most stress and the least able to actually follow my goals, was creating too many annual TBRs. And like I said in my goals video for 2023, that is something that I am attempting to rectify this year. So I would love to hear from you in the comments down below. How did your goals go for 2022? Do you even set goals? And if you do, how is it going when you're looking back at your reading year? Do you feel like you stuck to those goals? Do you feel like you kind of went rogue? And what do you feel like was most successful in your reading year in 2022? Whether it is a new habit that you implemented, or a new way of doing things, or a goal that you fulfilled, or something like that. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please hit like and also subscribe so you can continue to see more bookish content from me, and I will see you again next time.